Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar of this morning, CRA Standards Unlocked webinar. And today is all about navigating smart cards and similar devices and secure element compliance under the Cyber Resilience Act, the so-called CRA. My name is Els, and I will be moderating the webinar in the background. During the webinar, you will all be muted, so you cannot speak out loud, but we do invite you to use the Q&A panel to submit your questions. So the speakers will try to have a look at the questions as good as possible and reply as many questions as possible. The webinar has been recorded, so we will also share with you the presentations and the recording later on. This is what the Q&A panel looks like. And should you be on one of our social media channels like X, Blue Sky, or LinkedIn, feel free to talk about the topic. We have a dedicated hashtag standards for CRA about the CRA standards. So without further ado, I think I can introduce shortly the agenda. So there will be an introduction on the CRA standards and the standardization requests. We will explain you what is a harmonized standards, the technical work that goes with it, and the funding opportunities that you might have. In addition, we have the pleasure to have Mr. Ivan Plajh with us. He's a rapporteur of CEN TC 224, more in particular working group 17 and working on the CRA standardization requests. So I give the floor first to my colleague Lucia, who is project manager Electrotechnology in the standardization and digital solutions team. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Els, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to see you here. We will start with a small recap so that we put the context under the work that Ivan is doing together with his team at the CEN TC 224 on the smart cards applications. So first, let's do a small recap of why we are doing this. So we're working on the CRA standardization request. And this is basically a formal document that CENELEC and ETSI have received from the European Commission requesting harmonized standards to support the implementation of the Cyber Resilience Act. So this is a document that is publicly available, what we call a mandate or a standardization request. You will see this number is just the number of all of the standardization requests. They all get a number, and this is available here when you will receive the slides. You can check it yourself. And this is important because you can see all of the topics that actually received a standardization request. Today, we will be focusing on only one of those, and we will have in the future also other webinars for all of the other topics at CENELEC. What we are doing then with harmonized standard, this is the slide that contains a lot of information in case you don't know it. But the harmonized standards can only be developed by European standardization organizations after we receive a standardization request. So there exists this prerequisite that the Commission has to issue standardization request to CENELEC and or ETSI. And when we receive standardization requests, we will develop the harmonized standards, but it doesn't mean that the harmonized standards are mandatory then to use by industry or by manufacturers or by any other economic operator. So even though they become harmonized, the standards, their use always remains voluntary. So there can be other ways to comply with any kind of legislation besides having the harmonized standards. But they can facilitate then the compliance, the market surveillance. So they play a very important role also in the European single market as well. So they have an important role, but it's important to remember that the use is really voluntary. And something interesting is that the Cyber Resilience Act is the first kind of its regulation. And when we really want to see all of the essential requirements in the Cyber Resilience Act, we don't see in the current standards existing touching upon different cyber topics or the EUCC or different protection profiles. There is nothing that absolutely covers all of the essential requirements. So we are now under the task of developing these documents that will help really to cover in completion for each of the different products that have been requested on the standardization request, so that we can develop the harmonized standards to facilitate the compliance. This is a little bit for you to know the process in which and why we develop these harmonized standards. Then, as I said, these are requested by the European Commission to CENELEC or ETSI. And here there is also a collaboration at the international level when it's relevant. And finally, these documents, once they are produced, these harmonized standards, they are assessed by the European Commission because they need to check if they really offer the legal certainty, the legal clarity that they need to become harmonized. So it's not just us developing the standards, but then there is really a lot of work together with the European Commission, and they will assess that we are compliant really with what it's required by the regulation. And if they are accepted, then they can become cited in the official journal of the European Union and the standard offers a presumption of conformity, let's say, to whatever product that is covered under the standard. So in this case, for the Cyber Resilience Act, all of the risk needs to be mitigated then, and then the standards will offer then a way to try to show and do that in a complete manner. A little bit for you to know what kind of standards were requested, what is the program that we offer to reply to the standardization request, what are the timelines? Because of course we have the regulatory timelines, that's the entry to application of the Cyber Resilience Act is December 2027, but we are trying to be ready with these documents a year in advance. And that's what the Commission has requested to us, to be ready with the documents at least October 2026. But we will see the timelines in detail, and we will show you how is the work organized and how you can participate. If you're interested, if you have the expertise, you can join us in the work, and you will see that at the end of the presentation before I give the floor to Ivan. This is a slide I really like from the European Commission. I took them from their presentations. And it shows a little bit how the structures are made. So we received a request for 41 topics or different deliverables reflecting the essential requirements of the Cyber Resilience Act and also reflecting different product categories, the important products class 1, class 2, and the critical products. And that's basically what we see here on the top of the pyramid. We have been asked to build a framework of horizontal standards that is basically how to respond to the essential requirements and the vulnerability handling. And the rest of the standards are what we call type C or product-specific ones that are actually going to implement in a very concise manner and concrete manner the implementation of those essential requirements. So of that generic framework that is being developed at the horizontal level, it's going to be developed then for a product specific for a use case, and then that can offer the presumption of conformity with the different standards. This is just a summary for you to then to see that it's a very, very heavy slide, but just to show you that these 41 topics, there are 3 types of deliverables, the horizontal frameworks, the vulnerability handling, and then all of the product-specific ones, important and critical products in particular. And each of these has a deadline. So then when we think, I will show you what it looks like, the standardization request. It's a table actually with all of the entries, all of the 41 topics that I was showing to you before. Each one has a deadline, and simply what we do when we respond to the standardization request, we translate this into a work program, and each work program, each deliverable will be developed what we call a technical committee. So before we were saying that Ivan, he's a rapporteur in the CEN TC 224, that is a technical committee that is developing some of the topics in particular, but for that we have different technical committees. This information is also publicly available, and we will share with you the website that we have so that you can find all of the relevant information. This is a timeline. So I was saying we intend because the Cyber Resilience Act enters into application in December 2027, the Commission has requested that the standards are ready at least a year in advance so that manufacturers can have really time to get access to the standards and implement it on time so that they can prepare for the entry into application. So it's a really heavy task. We are here. We have started already at the beginning of the year to work on the standards. But if you see, this is really the main focus now, because the fact that we have to deliver by October 2026, we cannot just draft the standards until September 2026. There are certain procedures that take place in standard development that we take them into account, and that makes that actually most of the work and drafting is happening this year, because then other procedures will take place in 2026. There will be public inquiries, there will be feedback to instance to these standards, and several iterations still need to take place next year. So the first draft, the first stable draft will be created now. So it's really now where it's important to hear from you, and that's why we're having this series of webinars, which will be followed by a deep dive session for each of the topics, where we will expect to show you what we are doing and to collect your feedback as well. And of course, if you want to join the work, you will be mostly welcome, so that we need an extra couple of hands that can support us in the drafting and the expertise. So if you do want to join us, or you want to understand how we work, mind we work under technical committees. So in the work program that you saw before, depending on the topic and the scope, so we assign the topic to a technical committee. And in each technical committee, we have different working groups. And that's what you basically will see, that is a recurrent topic when we talk about the different developments. We always talk about the technical committee working group that is doing the work. And as I said before, it's a lengthy procedure, the standard development. So we have different stages. Right now we're at the drafting and consensus building, but there are many other stages before we can go to publication. So that's why it seems until October 2026 there is a lot of time, but it's actually not so much time. Finally, this is a summary of the requested standards, just for you to know how the important products and critical products correlate with the different vertical standards or product-specific standards that we received. And, I came back. This is just how to participate. So if you're interested to join any of the technical committees, or in particular this topic on smart cards, Ivan will tell you more later, but we are member-based associations, CEN and CENELEC. We are the European associations, the European level, sorry, and participation takes place via the national members. So you need to identify where you are located, and then these are the different national standards bodies. So basically experts come at this level, they join their national body, and then the national body allows them to access the different technical committees at the European level. So this is the way you can participate, simply by contacting, for example, if you are located in France, your company is in France, you can contact AFNOR and request there that you want to join. There may be a membership fee, but then they will guide you in how to request the participation in the technical committee that you're interested in. And finally, if you are an expert who want to work on this either via your company or as an individual, or if you're a consultant, you can also have access to funding opportunities. This is a CyberStand project. This is a European project that seeks for contributions on any of the harmonized standards. So basically anything that was requested is a standardization request. And it's constantly open, the applications, as of the 23rd of June. And when we receive the applications, they are evaluated immediately. You don't have to wait until the 19th of September to know your results. So you can visit cyberstand.eu. If you type that on the browser and then you go to the funding opportunities, you will see all of the information to apply. And this week even we had a webinar to explain how to write an application, and that recording is made available on the website as well. So this is to further give you some means for you to join the work if that's needed from your side. So I think with that in mind, I will then give the floor to Ivan. He has some developments to show, minding that this is just a webinar, the introduction, and then there will be in the month of September a deep dive session where we will go really in the details and show you. So Ivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lucia. I will of course share my screen. I hope that everybody can see it. And also, thanks to everybody for joining this little webinar. At the end of the webinar, I will try to answer some of the selected questions, depending on the time. And I also must underline that for probably some more complex questions, we will take them back and evaluate them within the team that is working on this standard. So without further ado, I would like to present today the essentials about this important Cyber Resilience Act standard, in which we will learn about what a secure element from the perspective of this standard is, what is to be standardized, what's not to be standardized, where to search maybe in other standards that are evolving for more information. We will also reflect on the use cases and implementation of the secure elements, smart cards, and similar devices in particular areas of human activities. We will also expose some initial risk assessment principles, and we will also give you an outlook on what to expect from the deep dive session that will happen earliest in September. To make information from before a little bit more precise, from this mandate from the European Commission, where secure elements are in a Type C category of the critical products, you can expect 2 standards to evolve. One standard is about secure IC platform and a construct that is enabling the application, and application on top of the secure element is then enabling use cases. So please expect 2 standards, and today we are talking about the 41B, which is, we believe, closer to the areas of the human activities and the use cases that will be explained a little bit later. I'm also rather happy and privileged to introduce the small team that is working on that. Even if the number is not the biggest one, most of them have years of experience in standardization and in the field of secure elements, and also in applicative part. At the end of the call, and also as Lucia already explained, we would welcome more people that would like to join the initiative. About me, a couple of information, what makes me, I would say, suitable for this challenge. I do have more than 20 years of experience in various industries, and especially in the semiconductor industry, with secure elements since 2003, smart card production, development of the applications, and I also do have some experience in standardization, starting from electronic passports over the NFC technology global platform, and right now I'm very happy to be in CENELEC to work on that challenge. Very high level information, where are we right now? Lucia introduced the stages and the context of a rather structured process. So within CENELEC and under European Commission, the structure must be followed. This is a little bit different from the standardization that is sometimes happening in industry-specific alliances. So here we are following a regular procedure in order to make sure that this harmonization and standardization is complete. There are also multiple reviews by independent entities, and also there is also a public inquiry that will be started as soon as the standard is ready for that. Now we are starting to talk a little bit more about the challenge as we see it. When we talk about secure elements, many people would know that this is a technological concept and a component that is present in many products, in many use cases. And right now, to start the standardization of the word secure in the secure element after 20 years in the market, it's of course rather difficult. We understand, appreciate, and respect that there are many industry-specific areas where security practices have already been established. So what we are doing in our team, we are definitely having essential cyber resilience requirements as a fundament, but we are equally reviewing established practices in particular areas such as payment, banking, USCC for SIM cards and subscription models in the mobile industry. And we also feel obligation to try to reuse it. So whatever is established and whatever is equivalently responding to the essential cyber resilience requirements should be respected in the standard and potentially even reused in the assessment procedure. But it also needs to be clear that we are aiming to develop the state-of-the-art standard. So as with every standardization, some of the standards might come a little bit of the age and maybe they do not have the state-of-the-art context in it. So in these cases and wherever we notice gaps, there will be additional effort expected from manufacturers to meet the cyber resilience essential requirements. At the same time, I think that we cannot underline and stress frequently enough that usage of these harmonized standards is voluntary. I think that everybody should be reminded that European Cyber Resilience Act regulation is active, it's out there, and there is nothing preventing any manufacturer to try to comply with it. Assessments can be started on proprietary schemes on whatever effort manufacturer would deem as possible and important. Still, the benefit of the harmonization that definitely needs a consensus is that it can end with the presumption of conformity, which is reducing efforts and also making the entire process for the manufacturers potentially scalable also to the next generations of the products. With regards to the structure of this standard that we are writing, the most important is definitely the normative part. The normative part is coming with security requirements, and they must be structured and referenced in particular standards or defined by the standard itself. But you see that there is a big, very high column here with regard to the descriptive and informative part, especially because the secure elements are in the market for many, many years. The normative part must reflect on all of the aspects as good as it is possible in the time given to create a standard, and provide general provisions, risk assessment guidelines, context of the lifecycle management for secure elements, smart cards, and similar devices, which are essential for cyber resilience compliance. We need to reflect on the use cases, and we also need to explain precisely what the harmonization means. In that context, I think that for application layer and for many of the participants today in the webinar, use cases are, of course, what market is focused on. And we aim to clarify how to implement the essential requirements to make them practical for particular use cases. Now, let's talk a little bit about the secure element and application. You see that there are three rudimentary parts here. Of course, architecture of the secure element could be presented in a more complex way. Many would know that, but I think for the sake of the standard and for the sake of our webinar today, this rudimentary representation is okay. There is secure IC, there is execution environment, and there is application. We are, of course, aware that there are two ways from this simple picture that you see here. Some secure elements might actually have less need for the execution environment, and they could actually have bare metal implementation of the application on the secure IC without any features, qualities of the operating system or execution environment in between. And from that picture towards more complexity, you can also imagine a fully fledged card operating system or the embedded secure element operating system, such as known from Java card or proprietary native solutions, where multiple applications can be managed, where different management of the security domains and security access rights can be managed. All of this is then represented under the standard, and everything has a right to be called secure element if the application is using it as such. The next big question is then, what is the smart card? We are aware that there are smart cards of any types, and there is probably a wide perception of what a smart card is. We have to narrow this in the context of this standard, and to simplify it, for this standard, a smart card must contain a secure element. Of course, a smart card also has a particular cognitive representation for many of us, which is even standardized in a 7810. There is also a particular form that a smart card would have. Therefore, we are also talking about similar devices, which is probably the most complex and widest category within this standard. We have tried to give at least certain presentation here about what a similar device could be. The most trivial explanation would be that anything what has a secure element in it can be considered as a similar device. So any form factor that is different than a smart card, and wherever there is also optional electronics and other digital devices in the context of the device, that's everything a similar device. Now, needless to say that many of these devices can actually have an identical application executed in particular use cases. It's also important to say what is not in the scope of this particular standard, where coverage can be expected if deemed as important. Coverage can be expected in other standards. So, for example, there are cards, use case specific cards, without secure elements or even without the need for secure elements. These are typically some cards, for example, you could see them in public transport, where some of them do not even protect personal information, anything what would be GDPR relevant in a direct identification context. And what's also characteristic for them is that they can evolve on any type of the integrated circuit. So integrated circuits that are not having qualities of the secure IC. To be very precise, these types of the products are not covered by this particular standard. There might be other standards evolving and covering their functionality. Also, the other context that we need to explain, what is also not in the scope of this particular standard, are the constructs known from different architectures. One of them would be trusted execution environment. And another one would be even integrated secure element. There are other special groups within a standardization process where some of them might be covered, but it is also possible that if we don't cover them immediately with these standards that we are creating right now, that at later stage we would open a new standardization procedure if this will be requested and if this will be seen as important. But also, needless to say, the principles and the responses to essential security requirements will remain identical. One of the challenges that we are facing is related to the lifecycle management. Of course, when we take a look at evolution of the smart cards and secure elements, And smart cards were there before secure elements. I think that this is known historical fact as well. Along with this, more than nearly 30 years of development, also different lifecycle management systems were established. Some of them were even standardized. So the standard coming now after 20, 25, 30 years, trying to regulate security requests during the life cycle of these products is facing not a moderate challenge. I think that this is obvious. So we cannot be prescribing something that would destroy the schemes that are already established unless they are not offering sufficient and equivalent response or expected response to the essential requirements. There are industry-specific lifecycle management systems. This is known, but this is also not a problem with the approach that we have taken, because we are more focused on the response to the essential requirements than to the regulation of the lifecycle management. So it would be, of course, much easier to prescribe a new lifecycle management system, but it would also come with the additional, potentially unnecessary effort for the manufacturers. So we will all have a little bit more work to look how are the responses and how are the requirements fitting into existing system, as good as it is possible and as good as we will be able to do that. That's, for example, one of the reasons where we would welcome more experts in our team. Just maybe a little bit about which standards, and this is really just a rudimentary excerpt. There is a ISO 15222, ISO AC standard that is rather generic on it. Then some of the participants might know about the protection profile 9911, which is a rather old one, which was also defining a life cycle management of the smart cards. And then there is also a global platform series of the standards in different versions and different layers that is also very well managing the life cycle of the secure element. So trying to, for example, find a common denominator only between these three seems to be a mission impossible. Also, there's a couple of practicalities with the lifecycle management. So please imagine one application, let's say payment, that can be executed from two devices. One device is a smart card, another device is mobile phone. We know that we can pay over the contactless interface with both of them. This is a very normal today. They are using even same communication protocols. It's just a little bit different how the application is running. But for example, a problem, a security issue, or even a functional issue can be identical in both of them. To some extent, even the secure element on the smart card and in the smartphone have pretty much identical architectures in some cases. But looking at the lifecycle management of the smart cards, it should not be expected that the end user, that is the only person that has access to this card that is only occasionally at the terminal, that user would actually feel obliged to perform the updates. So in most of the cases, especially in a payment, the established practice is to send new cards out and to invalidate the old ones. So this is the way how we would manage the life cycle of smart cards. And in this case, there would be a premature end of life event for the smart cards. On the other side, with secure elements in the smartphones, the security updates can be performed seamlessly. Everything is also protocolized. Most of the phones are predominantly online almost all of the time. So here, this can be played in with a regular update. This can be done also separately with user consent. Everything is possible here. Good. So in the next couple of minutes, I would like us to expand on the normative references and the obligation, how we can use them. I find this as a rather important context because here we also can learn that technical specifications from particular organizations like IEEE, World Health Organization, you see some of them exposed here, for specific sectors, that they can be respected as a normative reference, but generally we are using ISO, IEC, and European norms as a fundament of every standard that is going to be harmonized and that is evolving. National standards even, because there are national standards that can be sometimes deviating a little bit from the international standards. For them, we would need exception. The technical reports are usually only informative, and technical specifications, they are really, really informative and essential. But wherever there is a conflict between them and national standards, we definitely look into ISO, IEC as a baseline, and sometimes we will even revert back and maybe even define something that is state of the art in this case. One of the examples here, what to expect in it. So if you take a look here at the standardization and harmonization, in the standard you will see, and this is just the initial list, the actual list is already much longer and it is still evolving. In the normative part, we will look for the state of the art. So you have seen the triangle that Lucia explained. This is where the harmonization has to happen. Along with that, if there is a fundament, for example, we know that common criteria is one of the fundaments for the security industry, especially in a secure elements context since many, many years. This is also something what we will pull into the normative reference, but more for the reason to reuse the language that is describing what to do, not to be prescriptive. And in the bibliography of the standard, there will be many other references that are really more informative then. Also, we need to be attentive to the expected change, which is already in progress. We all know that the European version of the common criteria is somehow focusing the common criteria as we know it to applicability and to the usability within European Union. And especially for application layer, there are industry-specific protection profiles that we also study and understand. We need to understand them in order to propose some standardized approaches. This representation that you see here is purely informative. Please don't take this as information that we are migrating to the EUCC. However, I think that this is an expected way. We just need to find consolidation, especially in this middle part, industry-specific protection profiles and practices that have been already established. How is this fitting left? How is this fitting right? That's a rather difficult procedure. Use cases for secure elements. On the left side, you see the description of what is the intended purpose, and it feels, when you read that, slightly abstracted. But this is the essence of why we need secure elements. It's really about the communication through the interfaces. It's really about the processing and computing securely information in a specific environment that can be protected by hardware and by software measures. And it's also about the storage of this information. On the right side is something what feels more as a use case for secure element that is closer to our human perception. So a little bit less of the computer science. These are, I dare to say, usual suspects of where you can find secure elements, either on the side of token that is needed to initiate one transaction, or as a reading device where this initial information received from the token would be validated. One of the obligations that we have is to explain the risk assessment process. So what you see here, it's not a final proposition. This is a proposition that we are working on. I know that it feels rather natural to many, and it is relatively easy to explain, but there's a good reason why it cannot be pronounced as a final yet. We need to respect evolvement from the horizontal standards that are in progress. And at some point, hopefully rather soon, we will be able to modify what we see here. Nevertheless, we need to propose something that is specific for the secure element and smart card industry. When we look into protection profiles for some use cases, we have also found out that there are different ways how to establish risk profiles for this particular use case. There are also companies that are performing some other practices for security maturity, where even the entire environment around the product is coming with policies for secure software lifecycle development and all of the structured practices that are helping companies to keep the security level over the time. But if we don't have something in a standard that is trying to build a baseline for how do we assess the threats, how do we judge the severity, and how is this then to be combined in a risk profile, then it will be impossible to propose concrete measures and concrete requirements what a manufacturer needs to do. So this is one of the chapters that we will likely have to dive in deeper in the upcoming calls and in upcoming time. But for now, I hope that this is at least giving the outline that this is essential part of the standard. And this is one of the components where we need to try to unify also the practices that are already established. More about the essential security requirements and what you can expect there. Literally, we call this 14+8. There are requirements on the products. So this is from the Annex 1, Part 1. And there are requirements on the vulnerability handling. And the standard will have to respond to each of them with expectations from how to achieve the compliance according to the response by the standard. Allow me just to be a little bit more practical about it, and we will look only into one example. If we take just the security by design here, there is a reference to a particular document that you can expect. Please, we are using this for the language, not for prescription. And some of you will immediately recognize that this is coming from common criteria. It's simply because the procedure is explained there. There is no reason for us to say the same with different words. This would just make the perception in the community just more clogging and complex. And there is also a criteria that is saying how will this be assessed. I think I cannot underline enough that involving the standardized assessment methodologies, it's not the same like having the certification scheme. By using common criteria language, we are not prescribing the common criteria evaluation and certification. This is still the open process and it's a rather meaningful process, but standard is not a protection profile, standard is not a security target, and it's not enforcing something like this. We are simply seeing the need to have assessment methodology to harmonize the context, to harmonize the standards, and also to enable the presumption of conformity. Of course, adaptations towards European common criteria are considered, and they will be part of our work. One of the informative parts of the standard, so not normative, but informative part, is also our attempt to make implementation of the standard and assessment of the standard or against the standard even easier, especially for established use cases. There is always an essential requirement, and the question is whether there is an adequate response already by established practices from use cases that we know it, typically payment, government, UICC. So if there is a, for example, security by design context, there is in a standard, you can expect a normative response. But also, if we find an alternative industry-specific response, we will try to reference it and describe it shortly. And then it is on the evaluator in the assessment process or in process of establishing presumption of conformity to document this well. This is definitely hard work. This is not easy because we already see some differences in interpretation of how established practices are not so 100% in line with the normative response, but one and the other could actually respond to the cyber resilience essential requirement. For that work, we would welcome more people who would be happy to help us with that. Okay, so we are already at the end of our short presentation, short webinar. I already can announce the deep dive session into this standard, where there will be much more content in it. For this first webinar, this was, I hope, sufficient. The outlook is to have this deep dive somewhere around September 2025. This is, of course, depending on the progress that we will make. And with that being said, shortly back to Lucia. While Lucia is trying to explain details, I have seen some questions. I will look shortly into questions that have been posted here, and I will just try to answer at least one or two of them.
So thank you very much, Ivan. I was trying to unmute myself. So yes, thank you everyone for your questions already. There were some questions that maybe we will need to take a look and then come back to you later. The idea is that we will publish a Q&A report afterwards, and or maybe contact you individually if maybe we needed to understand more about your question. And of course, the Q&A report will be published anonymized, so we will not publish your email addresses and nothing like that. So very briefly, I wanted to show you, just for your information, there is a new webinar series that we launched, to which this one is part. So I will share my screen and actually also share it with you here in the chat in case you are interested to take part of any of the upcoming webinars. It's here, the webpage, and also I'm going to share my screen right now to let you see. So the idea, as we told you, is that we are developing many standards, as you know. I hope you can see my screen with the CRA Standards Unlocked. I think that's the case. Okay, and then here you can see the different webinars that are announced, the one of today, but there are different ones according to the topics that are assigned to CEN and CENELEC. The ones in ETSI will be disseminated in different ways, and also we will inform you accordingly. But everything that will be related to CRA webinars that are developed as CENELEC will be announced here on this webpage. And as we said, we try to show you how is it that we're doing with the developments. And as Ivan was mentioning before, this is a discussion that is ongoing, is not finalized, and we hope to show you more during the deep dive session. And just like that, for each of these webinars, there will be a deep dive session as well that will last longer. It will be a couple of hours and will allow for then a concrete participation of you. We will include some polls, some questionnaires, so that we can gather some feedback and understand if we're moving in the good direction. And that's a way where we can try at least to include participants. We try to focus mostly on SMEs and open source community, because we know it's not very easy for these communities to participate in the standard development as it is maybe for bigger firms and larger companies. So that's indeed why we are trying to do these activities. And this is part of a project that the name is Stanford CR project. And again, here, in case you find it useful, you can find a lot of information about the Cyber Resilience Act. This is a website that contains all of the technical work, the events, funding opportunities, any kind of resources, materials. Also, we published it here. So, okay, I hope Ivan that gave you some time to go through the questions.
Absolutely.
I give back the floor to you.
Now I'm having even ambition to answer them all because there are not too many and we still have a little bit of the time. So currently from Mr. Resch, Andreas, how is the EN related to the work of ENISA? All I can say is that ENISA is, if you don't mind, I will then read the questions loud and answer them, and maybe we can even unmute some of your colleagues.
That's fine.
So Andreas, thank you for your question. ENISA is actively monitoring our work. We don't feel them so actively. They are very, very polite and leaving us to progress with our expert where the best we can. But there is absolutely a respectful amount of the expertise within ENISA, and I guess that they will be one of our main challengers very constructively. So I hope that this answers, but they are not actively writing the standard. They are more on the reviewing and advisory side. Then from Alessio Di Carlo, there is already a response made there. The question is, or the comment from Alessio is, it remains unclear whether the entire system on chip integrating the integrated secure element must be classified as a critical product and therefore subject to CC certification under the EUCC scheme, or if this requirement applies solely to integrated secure element subsystem within the SoC. So Alessio, I think that we are not talking about any product with digital element that should be subject to common criteria under the EUCC or any other schemes. The integrated secure element feels like a critical component. And as explained, we might look into that at a later stage. However, integrated secure element is integrated directly into the silicon as we know it, and There is already excellent work in progress by our colleagues in the Technical Committee 47X that are, I mean, they have even much bigger challenge to comprehend all of this. So for now, I think that I can only comment that we are not talking about the common criteria or EUCC certification schemes, and standard cannot really prescribe this scheme. We are not prescribing the certification. Standard is here only to help with clarity about how to reach compliance. Compliance in most of the cases can be also, if you use harmonized standard, you can go with a presumption of conformity, which does not mean that you have to certify the product against any scheme. Then Pau Ribas, secure IC and secure embedded OS, but within application, whatever use case, payment, telecom, government, do you have to rely on this standard anyway? Paul, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I understand the question. Would you be comfortable to speak about it?
If you're comfortable, you can raise your hands and then we can unmute you. All right, let's see. Okay, I think you can speak now.
Paul, you
Can
hear?
you?
Yes.
You.
Hi.
Okay, perfect. No, I think that I already got the answer. A little
From Carolina.
Okay,
yeah,
from
yeah,
Carolina.
from Carolina.
Okay, super. Thank
So
you.
it's clarified. Thank you.
Okay, good. So very clearly, this is also similar to the question that we have had. Whatever is not having functional application on the secure IC and underneath the platform, that's part of the 41A. Okay, so whatever is not helping you to pay, identify, and so on. So typically the chip with, you could have a bootloader on it, or you could have a complete Java card operating system on it with global platform management. That's basically what we see in the 41A. And then in the 41B, it's when you put the applet on it or multiple applets. This is changing the security context. And this is the reason why we also need to look into this application layer. Okay, so I think that we have answered a couple of questions, actually 14 of them. So thank you also, colleagues who have, I see some experts and some names here that have helped with answering some questions.
I am going to announce, I put something in the chat to everyone. It's from the Stanford CRA webpage, a page on the CENELEC TC 47X, the ones also developing the 41A, what we call the first part of the standard of the entry 41. And there is a very good video by one of the experts. There are actually very good videos in general explaining what the CENELEC TC 47X is doing. And then this material maybe can help you in understanding a little bit better the different parts of the scope. And events, dissemination events and webinars for the TC47X already took place earlier this year. That's why we're now focusing on this other part, just to clarify who is doing what, because it's not easy to follow. All right, we hope then that was helpful. I'm not sure, Ivan, if you want to mention anything else before we close.
We are done for today. Only special thanks to Els, to Lucia for helping to establish that. Also publicly to the team that is working on it. We have some tough times, so it will be very hot summer for some of us. And also thanks to everybody who reserved the time and joined the webinar today. Much appreciated.
Stay tuned for the deep dive. We will send you a reminder, or otherwise, please stay tuned in the communication channels. And we hope to see you there and have your feedback then during the deep dive session in September.